Joy to the world. When I hear those words, I don't think about Christmas carols. I grew up in the 70s, and I was raised by a couple of wannabe hippies who loved great music and threw kick-ass dinner parties. So when I hear those words, I think, joy to the world, all the boys and girls. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me. Great. It's one of the first songs I remember learning as a kid. I used to run around the house singing it at the top of my lungs. So I'm here to tell you about joy. And for all the boys and girls, and for all the beautiful non-binary beloveds. Specifically, I'm here to tell you about my joy, my beautiful, brilliant daughter, my heart walking around outside my chest. She was the single most joyful child I've ever met. Like from the very start. She was such a great baby that her dad and I decided to cut our losses and not have any more kids. Now, I admit I'm biased, but I am telling you, she was such a happy baby. She didn't walk until she was almost a year and a half old, and then she ran everywhere for the next 5 years. This is a child who, and her dad and I have racked our brains to try and remember, she never threw a single tantrum. She laughed and giggled as she got ready for bed every night. She woke up singing and taught herself to read when she was like 2.5 years old. She asked incessant, insightful questions and loved to snuggle just as much as she loved to dance around the room. A fearless, funny child with a genius IQ who, from a really early age, showed this astonishing ability to make music. A child that specialists called twice exceptional. And I remember hearing that and thinking, only twice? You are definitely underestimating this kid. This child was full to the point of overflowing with brilliance, unbridled enthusiasm, and curiosity, and joy. Both her dad and I love music. I can sing a little, and her dad can pluck out a tune on the guitar, but neither of us are what you'd call musical. We knew right away that we were in over our heads with our precocious little rock star, so we got her into music lessons, and we got her into a performance program, and we jumped in with both feet. I became a rocker mom instead of a soccer mom. And I kind of made it my whole personality for a while. I volunteered at her shows, and I made her spandex pants, and I got into a bidding war in an online auction for a chainmail kilt that I decided she definitely needed for a shock rock show. Her dad scoured the corners of the internet for obscure musical instruments and haggled on Craigslist for something called a rototom, which I didn't know was a thing, but it's a shellless drum that you can tune. And if you're not a music nerd like my husband or my daughter, you might know the sound from the beginning of the Talking Heads song, Burning Down the House. All this is to say that in retrospect, we were maybe a little too involved. I'm sure to some people I seemed like an unhinged amalgam of a stage mom and a bulldozer mom. But this is our only child we're talking about here. And from the moment she arrived, she was the center of our universe. I remember the afternoon we were backstage, and I was applying bright purple blush to my daughter's face before she got her on stage for her first rock show. It would be another 4 years before she came out as transgender. But there she stood in head-to-toe spandex, unbelievably calm and confident. And I remember asking her if she was nervous. She was about to get up on stage in front of a lot of people and sing, after all. And she just looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Like it hadn't even occurred to her to be nervous. And then I watched her get up on that stage in her spandex and her glitter, and let hundreds of people know that Saturday night is, in fact, as Elton John once wrote, all right for fighting. She absolutely killed it. She killed it. And I realize, looking back on that stage presence isn't just the absence of stage fright. It's an innate ability to get up on stage and insist that people see you. So for the next several years, we didn't take vacations unless they were to music festivals. We spent our afternoons in the car driving to music lessons. We spent our weekend afternoons in some very questionable dive bars watching our kid play classic rock. And let me tell you, she thrived. She found her music, and she found her people, and she found her joy. When our daughter was 14, she came out to us as trans. Although in retrospect, I suspect she was thinking about it long before she ever got on stage wearing a rocker's glitter and spandex. Her dad and I don't even really remember the how or the when. It was less of a surprise than a revelation. The signs were there, and suddenly everything just clicked into place. I guess it was just another way in which our child was more than twice exceptional. Well-meaning friends would ask if my Wyoming cowboy husband was disappointed to have a daughter rather than a son. And we would just laugh. And he'd say, I just wanted a rock star. I don't care what gender they are. For us, there was no before. There was no, we used to have a son and now we have a daughter. We always had a daughter. We just didn't know it. Once again, we jumped in with both feet. And we did all the things we thought we should in terms of gender-affirming care. We engaged with doctors and therapists and the schools and our families. We made damn sure that everybody was on board with her female gender. We bought her girls' skinny jeans instead of boys' skinny jeans. Although, to be clear, in the 2010s, there was no real difference. All the boys and girls rocked skinny jeans. Of course, 2015 was a very different time. It's not that we didn't have anxiety about our daughter being trans, but our concerns were more nebulous and unknown, mostly a fear of what we didn't know yet. Sure, we kept our heads on a swivel, ready to protect our daughter from any threat, but we got surprisingly little pushback and more support than we'd expected. But we did not move forward at first with gender-affirming hormone therapy. I had other priorities for her, priorities that in retrospect I now regret. Because in spite of the emotional and social support, she struggled in her masculine body. She really struggled. She hid it, and she hid it really well. And her dad and I didn't push. We kept telling each other, this is her journey. We're just here to keep her safe. We should have pushed. We should have asked more questions of her doctors and of her and of ourselves. She didn't want us to know that she was secretly fighting depression, anxiety, and dysphoria in her masculine body. She didn't want us to worry. She wanted us to be fine. She wanted to be fine. And on stage, she was more than fine. She could still be fearless and flamboyant. Shoulders back and head high, dressed however she wanted, jumping up onto speakers and singing at the top of her lungs or wailing on the drum kit like it owed her money. After all, rock stars from great to garage have been flouting gender stereotypes since David Bowie was a baby and Prince was in Pampers. On stage, she could be whoever she wanted. She could demand attention. Off stage, she often dressed like she wanted to be invisible. Shoulders hunched under nondescript hoodies. Skipping lunch so she didn't have to deal with the school cafeteria. Not drinking enough water so she didn't have to use the faculty bathroom that the schools insisted on. Picking her battles. Keeping her head down, literally and figuratively, and asking for as little attention as possible. She put on what I can only describe now as a brave face, getting up every day and singing in the shower, going to school and never missing a rehearsal, and very purposefully avoiding even a hint of teen angst. She had friends and girlfriends. She had purpose and focus. But she hid her sadness from us, unwilling or unable to express what I now know was her dysphoria, her absence of joy, born from the disconnect and dissonance between her inside experience of herself and her physical body. Finally, at the age of 18, after 4 years of living her truth as a woman, she finally started her medical transition. And when she started on those hormones, it's like a light came back to her eyes and a lightness to her body. She started experiencing gender euphoria rather than dysphoria. Her body started to look and feel like her. Watching my daughter transform made me understand just how much she'd suffered. And I wanted to turn back time and bulldoze my way through every roadblock that got in the way of those hormones, every roadblock that I put in the way. And I wanted to give her back those 4 years she lost to dysphoria. But I can't turn back time. I can only share what I learned the hard way with other parents whose trans child is ready to take the next step in their journey, whatever that is. And I can only celebrate that my daughter once again demands all the attention, off stage as well as on. She does not want to be invisible. She enters a room now like there's a studio audience erupting into spontaneous applause at the sight of her. She soars through life like a comet, dressed like a music's original supermodel, a latter-day Patty Boyd in a pink beret and a mini dress and 4-inch patent leather Mary Jane heels. She blazes through life like a comet with a trail of light and laughter and exquisite girlfriends trailing behind her. She performs with fearlessness and fury and grace. She opens her home, her heart, and her life to other trans women who don't have supportive parents or don't enjoy the same safety that she's so privileged to feel. And she teaches music professionally now, with generosity and love and humor. And every time she sits down with a new student, a new rock star in the making, I think how lucky that kid is to be introduced to the joy of music by this confident, self-possessed woman. Joy is an act of resistance, wrote the great Black American poet Toy Darracott. I see on social media how those words have been appropriated by people of privilege to rationalize their weekly massages or their daily matcha lattes. But I also see how they've become a power-filled call to action for women of power, for women of color, and adopted and embraced by marginalized people like my daughter. And as the parent of a trans child, I have learned deep in my body that joy is an act of resistance, because it feels like way more than 10 years since my daughter came out. It feels like a century. Because now our fears for our trans daughter aren't nebulous and unknowable. The threats from the current administration to people who are trans are very direct and very specific. Demonizing them, taking away their civil rights and their access to the very gender-affirming medical care that I learned almost too late can make all the difference. These attacks have come way too close to my family. My daughter knows these threats personally. So do her trans friends. But in spite of these threats, my daughter continues to bring her joy to the world. And whenever her dad or I reach out to see how her week is going, Her response is always some variation of, I'm wonderful, I'm delightful, or I'm great. And we believe her. We are witness to her strength and her boundless capacity for love, and her entire joyous existence is an act of resistance. She will fight for that joy, and I will fight for that joy. And I hope you will fight with us too. Because as Elton John once wrote, and my 10-year-old daughter once sang, Saturday night's all right. Saturday night's all right for fighting. Saturday night's all right